So I want to know something. Like when you got into Frostpunk the first time, what was your expectations, or you went in with no expectations?
My expectation was for the game was it's going to be a survival city game, and yeah, that was my biggest expectation for it, really.
So like, could you describe your experience playing Frostpunk? Like, what was it like the first time?
Well, my first time playing New Home was rather abysmal. I didn't understand the game's mechanic, and I barely survived the first time with New Home. Like coal production was in the crapper. Food I managed to bake barely, but it was kind of a hard, and I did go. I was uneasy and I was sucking at first.
So what was so what was the one lesson that you learned from the first playthrough?
I learned actually a lot how to build. Need to push resource development first, but also juggle people's needs till you can build better. There's a lot.
Interesting. So what was one of the things you took away from the game after the first playthrough?
Basically, time is of the essence, and like how to deal with the refugee, like knowing what was going to happen, you could prepare it. Of course, every time I changed things differently, I was still just as prepared.
Well, that's true. That's the same experience that I had within the first few playthroughs of it. But
After I got to a certain point, I understood the mechanics. I knew how to disable scouts because that was the biggest thing. I could never complete the arc until I learned how to get rid of scouts.
I see. So that was one of the biggest problems that you had, finding a way to disable them.
Survive the arc sort of scenario.
Hmm. So out of all the scenarios like they've developed so far, which one would you say is the best?
Um, the out of them all, I would say New Home.
Why?
It's one of the best.
Well, yeah, you have a point there. I mean, you didn't really go in detail, but I can say like,
It's
go
a
on.
challenge, and it's also the longest of the four now.
Yeah, that's actually true. It is the longest of the four in terms of
And if you
content.
dragged it out in the right way, you could make it last for about 45 days, roughly.
Yeah, that's very much true. Because when I just jumped into it before the endless thing was a thing, I actually tried many ways to actually keep that thing going as long as possible.
Yeah, you have to take your time with like the refugees, let them come on their own. That slows it down. Wait, like basically wait for the survivor from Winterhold to come. That buys you more time, and pretty much that's it.
And what I can also say though is like right after the right after that guy comes from Winterhome, things get fast, real fast.
Not entirely. Like, here's the thing. I always had my scouts prepared to jump to the next map. Like, do the next. You know how I think it's the west end
Yeah.
of the map opens up after Winterhold.
Uh-huh.
I have two scouts ready to jump and get to Tesla as soon as possible to start up getting cores.
That was me as well. Like after about 3 playthroughs, that's what I used to do. I think the way how I see the new home to me is like the number one way to tell the story, but it also had this like special delivery thing to it. Like you couldn't get enough of it, if you know what I mean, in the
I know what
beginning
you mean.
stages. And then like after a while, it kind of got repetitive. I don't like
I know
saying
what you
this.
mean.
Yeah. So I'm saying now, if you guys manage to create all of this tech, you've created trading unintentionally. You've done it like 2 times Because I mean, you can see this in the Winterhome scenario and the arcs, as you mentioned earlier. The arcs you had to disable the scouts. So I've seen this trading system at work, and I've seen the managing of multiple cities as well. They test. Do you have a feeling that these guys have been testing out certain tech within the various scenarios?
I can agree. There were the automated scouts for starters that never appeared in any other but the Ark. And then there was the town defense when if you went like keep the rich people out way. But overall, well, like they did try things out, like the and also the generator repair for the Fall of Winterhome.
Yes, I remember that. That one was one of the coolest things I ever saw because it forced you to make a decision. Like what Frostpunk always is, the game that forces the player to make a decision. Either you staff with a lot of engineers or you send them dudes on the way to the Land Dreadnought. The other thing about the Winterhome I found very cool was the introduction of a second city. If you get what I mean, the Land Dreadnought was a second city in a way. But the thing is, the thing that I absolutely did not like as it relates to what 11-bit studios did was they never carried the tech over into the endless scenario. But what is your take on that? Them not carrying the tech over?
To the endless scenario?
Yeah.
I think with like mission oriented items, it's some items are mission oriented only.
What about the generator repair system? Do you think that is mission orientated only?
Well, to a degree, yeah. But like I can see problems with the generator in late modes.
Yeah, because I'm saying after a while the gen is going to need some additional repairs. There's gonna need to be somebody to actually fix it. And what happens if we want to expand the civilization? I don't see them saying that's impossible, but I mean, let's say we could actually do it. You know, we would need to do some research. So the repair station would be the best way to do research on the tower. What do you think, though?
Yeah, I could see it, but like it'll be a long time before they do something like that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, when I was looking at the map, and I actually, you saw the thing that I posted, the video about the little piece of information they released the other day. You remember that?
Yeah, I've been kind of ridiculously interested in that.
So here's a bit of content that I kind of figured out about this mysterious map that these dudes had the audacity to post and then disappear on. So this map is basically a faith city because I can see the House of Healing clearly on the map. You know, it's not really stated directly, but it's on the map if you look carefully. Some people might say, yo, just saying, it's impossible for you to actually predict that this is what the city is. But I mean, the faith mechanic, I think we've discussed this before, is one of the most powerful mechanics within the game. And in addition to that, you know, a lot of cities would more than likely be working on that system because we have information if you know what I'm talking about, the Winterhome scenario, what happened when they used order, that city failed. So I mean,
Yeah,
see, you remember it. So I'm saying now that
it's basically one dictator for another, but they're going with the original religious theme this time around.
exactly, and I'm thinking that religion, the religious theme, has the ability to pacify aggression much quicker versus the order because the order creates more discontent and it actually hurts people more than the faith does. Because when you enact the faith, it kills a few people when you go to the extreme, but overall, it actually keeps people alive and reduces the chance of you being kicked out. And I think it
Yeah,
was
I've
done
always
deliberately.
found that faith is fascinating. many religions, like, allow me to get a bit political, but I believe nationalism and religion will make quite a bit of a comeback very soon.
Well, yes, they will. I don't disagree with you on that. They will, but I was thinking somebody else said within the Discord and Reddit communities, respectively, that the Book of Laws itself, it should be in a state where you can actually repeal laws. What do you think about that?
I think we should be able to repeal laws, but the odds of them doing that right now is not likely.
It's not likely, I get it that it's not likely, but I'm thinking that maybe later on down the line they could think about it because those little mechanics can create more interesting ways of managing a city. Like it remains permanent until the city reaches a certain level, and then after that you can actually repeal laws, but repealing them has a certain effect to it.
Really has a weird effect to them.
That's what I'm thinking. There should be something absolutely out of this world that happens when you repeal laws. But here's another thing that I've been thinking about. What would you say I mean, I've said this many times, but what do you think about the endless scenario being the large playground where they just dump all the tech in that they've been adding into the various scenarios?
I think will be interesting.
Because I'm like, go on.
But I honestly don't think they'll do it that way.
What is your view that how do you think they might do it?
Look, like, if we have the Android Scout, we'll have one more Scout out there instead of just the two, like the three, I mean, which would be beneficial. Trust me, there's not enough time to send all the Scouts out at all.
That's exactly what I've actually come upon, because I'm trying to get the last relic, but I need more scouts, and I'm thinking, hey, what would be the cost to actually have an automaton scout? But I'm wondering if the
Probably
UI
a
would
lot
have
of
to be.
resources.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But these things they need a pilot. That's a problem. The automaton scouts need pilots, unfortunately.
Actually, they didn't need pilots in the earlier game.
They didn't. I
Not
thought
really.
I thought like when you sent them out, they would go out with one scout and some coal and something. Hmm. Wasn't that the requirement for the automaton scouts? You needed a certain
No,
amount.
resources.
I know the resource wise, you needed like some coal, some wood, and some steel and a steam core.
Yeah, not a steam core. It was just an automaton and
Yeah,
some.
yeah, correct. You corrected me. Good. But doesn't that kind of sound very strange? If you get, if Are you seeing where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Cause I mean, if it requires coal to actually leave the city, and it can stay within the frostland for like days at that small amount of coal or whatever it leaves with. I'm wondering now if they could apply this to larger machines.
Are you talking about larger automatons?
I'm talking about probably something like a larger automaton or maybe something a bit smaller than a dreadnought.
I see what you mean.
Because I'm saying if these guys have done trading, they've done city repair, they've done blueprints, they've even gone as far as worked out trading systems and repair and construction of land dreadnoughts. Wouldn't you kind of think that maybe they're going in the direction where we could be able to see all of these technologies coming together into one particular setting within the game's universe?
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that, but like they need to do something about the end game, really. Make it interesting enough that people will want to stay longer, because after 100 days, I have seen no reason to play.
I went up to approximately 120 something days and everything was the same. But I'm thinking maybe there is something in the form of them needing to write other content. But I think we're having a conversation about Anno and Anno 2070, I think, or something like that, where you
Anno 2070?
are.
Is that the Victorian style one?
No, 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 that's the one with the submarines.
Oh, that one.
You remember?
I played that.
I know.
I played
Remember?
that one to death.
Remember the aircraft carrier that would show up now and then?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the reference to that.
Yes, I was thinking maybe the end game could have like traders that come in and they could give you maps or something, and those maps would lead you to other areas that you could probably explore and maybe set up a city.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
I think that would make a good, interesting take for like the end game, and then maybe the April thing would make sense because we know there's one map where you can see the city, and there's another map where you can see the Frostland. But there could be a bit of a larger map showing a much larger landmass that has a timestamp around it where it's not days but months. Do you think that would make sense? So like it could last, like, let's say there's what, summer, then you have winter and autumn. I got them right. So we could have like seasons being played out where, depending on the level of the city, it can manage itself, and then you can send out expeditions deep into the wilderness of the sword of the Frostland. What do you think about that?
This is basically have expedition teams.
Yeah, like like large expedition teams that go to find other people and settle elsewhere. So like they could have
I
this on.
I could see that happening.
Because I'm saying, why not create a campaign that says, um, let's market, no, not market, let's rebuild society, because the lore dictates that the British Empire was really trying to sustain and secure society from complete annihilation. I mean, isn't that what the thing says in the very beginning? The city must survive, humanity must make it. So I'm saying that the mission, from my understanding of the mission, it was to get to Winterhome, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. And then from Winterhome, we would go on to repopulate New London, and then we would link up with Tesla to build the steam cores, so we could create a safe space within that area of operation, and then expand out. That to me is the most logical thing that they could be thinking. Because when these guys decided to, let's say, branch off and go somewhere else and set up a small outpost, you remember from the Winterhome scenario, to explore anomalies in the Frostland, that to me said that their whole plan, in essence, was to see what was causing it, how can we adapt, how can we connect with other people, and if there is anybody else out there, how do we link with them? And I'm gonna bring up back the final thing I brought up, and then I want you to give me your opinion on these things. Baby making.
I'm all ears.
What do you think about baby making?
What?
Having babies in the Frostland.
It's an inevitable reality.
Yeah, because I mean, nobody has had sex in 200 and something days. I'm like, what the fuck?
I concur.
Does that
Doesn't make
make
logic.
doesn't make any logical sense? Even the faith keepers know that. But I'm listening. What are you saying?
I find it ridiculous, but hey, I just think they don't want to touch on population growth because let's just face it, the engine's not the most stablest, I have to admit. Like, you have to have a high-end computer and it can go nuts.
Yeah,
It goes nuts.
yeah, that's true. It still goes nuts, but I'm wondering, like, is it possible for you to have the systems minimized? So, like, when you're in one city, that city is the only one that is loaded, and the other one is only simulated with, like, let's say, figures and numbers in terms of population, resource consumption, and only when there's an issue you get sent back to that city. Or like what they did with the notifications of the storm is like you get a notification the city needs this or some stuff like that. Do you think that could work?
Like the like a warning sign like we need this much food or we'll starve to death.
Some shit like that.
Yeah, and like if you request resources in return, like say cores, they could give it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So, all
City
right.
trade would be a vital thing, but stuff like steam cores would probably be uber expensive.
That's what I'm thinking. I was also looking into the fact that when you find a pre-built crater within the same region as where you're operating in, that pre-built crater could become an outpost. What do you think about that?
Hmm, it will become an outpost. Hmm.
So like,
Yeah, I
um,
can see outposts, but they would be like when they're first built, they will probably have the roughest time.
yeah, because the storm is gonna try and wipe them out. Cause here's this thing.
Right.
This there was a post that was made on Reddit about what happens when you fail in the endless, and it said that the snow covers up the pit or the area in which this city is situated. So I'm thinking that once a crater has been exposed, or if you find a shallow crater, you could build a small outpost there, but you'd have to send enough resources so they could survive the first storm. And then, like, if they survive, then you could then move on to actually populating that area, and then that would give you more scouts, and you could probably rebuild the outpost machinery and set up a trade link, allowing people to travel back and forth between cities. So, like a transportation hub like system or an ice rail, if it's possible for them to do such a thing. This is what I'm thinking if the larger region map is not possible. But what do you think about that?
Well, small little colonies, if they are self-contained, and you basically, can't see them making us build it, but I can see them like we give them resources to expand and be self-reliant.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Like in the initial stages, you can't control the city. So like what I mean is like during the stage of developing the generator, you could probably visit as a captain and you could see the construction, but you can't necessarily interfere. You give them resources and they build certain things so that they could survive. And then after the generator is up and running, you could go and visit, and then you can take over and command it. Or you can set up like a first officer or like a city manager that can go there and act as a representative of you. How about that?
Yeah, and there I could see issues like betrayal. Well, the outpost wants to invade you for resources because you're such an asshole to them.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. So a bit of politics in the making. And
And let's like it or not, politics is kind of a big thing.
yes, it is. It's a very big thing. It determines whether or not you decide that you're going to kill a whole bunch of people or you're going to peacefully work with them. And so I'm now thinking that, maybe doing this thing in terms of like having a political system, having the ability to build another city or help finance the construction of one, and then taking it over in the long run would be the best way to actually get things up and running versus, you know, actually just adding in some additional content in terms of allowing us to build certain structures. Having a mixture of the two could be something of a beginning stages to an end game and keep people playing, because I want to reach this level so I can experience the ability to construct multiple cities and explore other areas within the region I am situated in. How about that?
Hmm. I can see that. Basically expansion.
Yeah, because I mean, it would make sense for us to only exist within this small area and then we're confined there. That because humanity is an expansionist type of society. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we have been expanding across the earth ever since we have been conceived. So more than likely, the same thing is gonna happen when the city you construct in the endless scenario becomes successful. And how about this? This is the last thing that I can think of. Winterholm is destroyed, but New London becomes something like a hero city that you can visit and trade resources with.
Yeah, I kind of want these places to kind of connect because for the arcs and all that stuff, like, it would be very interesting.
So, what I'm now thinking is that you could probably muster up a group of like 30 men and women, and you can either send a diplomatic team or you can send a expeditionary force to take over the cities, because we know that the ark is under habit under populated. However, there's a city nearby called New Manchester that has a lot more people than the ark and seems to be more advanced, well, in the construction of certain tech, and then maybe in you finding the arcs, you end up going further and you find New London, and then you find the Tesla factory, and you can either work with New London or you can take the resource for yourself and try and ferry it back to your city. So, like, I'm thinking that there could be like probably 7 regions or at least 10 regions, 2 or 3 that are occupied with cities, and the rest of them that are empty. How about that?
Mm. Okay, complete brain fart on my end, but yeah, basically, it's like don't feel so alone. Every time I play the endless mode, I feel like I'm the last city and a bunch of survivors are just trundling around waiting to die. I are trying to survive desperately. That's what I feel like with every playthrough. It's like if we don't survive, we're doomed. The human race is doomed, sort of scenario feeling. Like if we had more people, it would feel more connected.
Yeah, that's the direction that I'm going in. I'm thinking that maybe we could get a scenario where we have more people in the areas around, so it creates this sense of there's a community, but it still has the isolated feeling because once the storm comes in, any path or roadways that you had to those particular cities disappear. Sounds fair?
Hmm. Basically, you only can visit them one time.
Well, yeah, you can only visit them one time until the storm. Ah, I've got it. So remember when I was mentioning the seasons? What they could do is you could have like various seasons, and you can only visit the cities in like April or like the summer periods. But once those periods end, you can no longer send expedition teams out to visit the areas. You can probably only talk to them via radio. So radios could be another means of communicating. So radio towers to an extent, but those radio towers would need to have probably an automaton or something to keep them running during the storm times.
Yeah, I can see a radio towers existing, and we build in one, but it requires a massive amount of resources, like 1,000 steel, for instance.
And
How often do you guys have 1,000 steels?
not that often. I mean, it all depends on the experience of the player and how mature the city is. So I'm thinking maybe those resources could be used to construct a radio tower, and the radio
At
tower.
first, where our primary focus is surviving,
Right.
uh, so it's not a practical scenario. Ariel, if like we are talking to other cities right away.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. So I'm thinking that the radio towers could be a part of the end game, but you'd have to really go to a certain level to actually get to it. And once you get the radio, so like there needs to be something that triggers it. So like when you reach a certain population limit within your city, you get the ability to trigger the construction of a couple of items. So here's the first one: the construction of chemicals. So the chemical plant needs to be a possibility, but the chemical plant would have to be built somewhere like on the outskirts of the city or in an adjoining crater to the city with a steam hub in it to prevent it from actually harming the population. And then after that,
Yeah, I remember the
yes,
from the mysteries,
yes, the chemical
the
plant.
early attempt.
So
That was the reason it never was implemented.
yeah, one of the reasons why is because the fear of it actually killing the population. Because we had a discussion with Rainbow Lord, is that his name, right? About the fact that it's virtually impossible to actually think that they would release poisonous gases over the city. And the steam cores are designed to, not the steam cores, the steam towers or the generator towers are designed to funnel the fumes and exhaust created from the production of heat and other energy to the outskirts of the city. So I'm thinking that, somewhere in the records or in the archives, they probably thought, this could be a good idea, but we might need to excavate a other cavern or another crater next to the city and then put the factory
Well,
in.
had a cave system in.
Yeah, with chimneys leading out of it or something like that.
Yeah, like leading outside the city.
So like the stacks would have as I would call it, like heat panels or whatever it is are surrounding it to keep frost from building up and clogging it, and then like it would pump the heat from the city, from the factory out onto the surface. And we could probably do the same thing with the we could reuse the asset that's used to create the vehicle from Winterhome and create like a garage as well to allow the construction of a land dreadnought and probably other smaller vehicles, and then we can have inter-region trade and external or larger area exploration and trading. And so with that, you can send out expedition teams to do all sorts of things, capture cities, diplomatic stuff. And here's the last thing that I'm going to talk about before I fall asleep: embassies. What do you think about embassies? Yeah, like you setting up.
Like, well, it would be a nice way to communicate between people. You would have to build something to establish a communication.
So like the beacon would have another researchable upgrade where you can create an embassy, and then like people from Winterhome and probably faraway regions like China and Russia or wherever it is, they could come and visit, and they could share resources.
Maybe.
Go on.
Lore.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I'll be frank. If the British Empire couldn't hold itself together, I doubt many other empires could as well.
Well, that's true. They might not have been able to. They might not have been able to survive, but like the game called Metro Exodus, there might be remnants of them within the Frostland that could be like bandits, or they could be fanatics like us, or they could just be regular people or scavengers that roam the Frostland in a nomadic kind of fashion, where as soon as the storms roll in, they tend to move to another region, and then when the storms leave, they come back. What do you think?
I can see bandits requiring security outposts to keep them out. It would add another level. People would be in danger. You'd need to protect your resources. they can still research and other things like that.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. And they could probably have small raids or stuff. So you might need to build guard posts, and when they come, the city members, it doesn't have to be something that you actually participate in, but it can be something that acts as a bit of a an exploratory expression of a simulated defense system where the cities could have the ability to actually defend themselves in the case of an attack. Here's another thing I was thinking about. I think this is probably the actual last thing before I fall asleep. um I was thinking that we could probably scavenge the Tesla city, take the resources from New London, and use those resources to create shielding for land dreadnoughts to facilitate interstorm trading. So the land dreadnoughts can travel within storms because they have an electronic shielding around them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could probably enter into, like, because the storm winds are extremely strong. They can enter into a form of encampment mode where there's an electronic field around the land dreadnought, and it uses a certain amount of coal for that period, and then after it emerges. But once it emerges, it sends out like probably 6 or 7 quests saying it needs food. So it has a group of hunters on board, um, some unskilled labor to gather basic resources, and a small transportation vehicle, and maybe a miniature beacon to communicate along with a radio tower. So when the teams go in the Frostland or within the Frost region of the Frostland, they can make their way back to the Dreadnought. How about that? So, like a movable city and a mainstay stationary city.
Hmm. I can see that. You can get a lot of resources from it.
Yeah. And you can also have expeditions, and that could be an end game thing as well, because then they could add on small events, small stories, and they could keep on doing it so it becomes an infinite loop where you just keep on exploring certain areas, finding new stories, new pieces of content, Easter eggs, interesting people with interesting backstories, and all sorts of stuff similar to that.
Hmm. I
Man,
think that's
go on, I'm listening.
I think that's a good idea.
Maybe I hope the devs are listening to this large and long rambling conversation. You know?
$50 say they're not.
$30, $40 say they are. Probably. Well, let's see what happens. Something might happen, something might not. But I'm gonna cut this short, and I'm gonna go to sleep in a little bit. So, I'm ending the stream. So
Yeah, you're tired, I'm tired, and I'm kind of distracted. I've been playing a thinking simulation 2 as we've been talking.
interesting. Game away, man.
Basically, you can sink the Titanic and all sorts of vessels. It's still in the it's like early access still sort of thing, but like it basically is like thinking mechanics 101. Like, you can sink a ship, you can make it strong, weak.
You can flood it a very specific way. You can split it into like the real Titanic. The list goes on.
Oh, that sounds interesting, man. All right, keep me posted on it, and we'll talk in a bit. All right.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
You too, man. See you in a bit, man. I'm out.
But
Go on.
when they release what they announced in April, can we talk about it?
Hell yeah, man. 100%.
Okay. Talk to you later. Have a good night, Lore.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Such an amazing dude. All right, guys. See you around.